Now, let me go to, oh, we need sound here. I'm sure your computer has a microphone.
Yeah.
Okay, let's hang the phone up. I think I can hear you. Hold on.
Oh, I already hung up.
Yeah. I got to turn my volume up here. Hold on a second. I got it way
Okay.
down low. There we go. Okay, and let's go through this. Common Core High School. This is the one where I've got to reduce my screen size, otherwise it doesn't work.
Yeah.
I can't have it. Okay, so now if I go to Algebra 2, it shows me where to go to. And what was the page number again? 254?
241.
Okay. It didn't seem like that. Now, did something wrong. I'm not sure what. Let me try it from scratch again. It is Common Core High School, right?
Yeah.
And then it's Algebra 2. Didn't like it when I put in page 241. There it goes. Now it liked it. And see, now I got to blow it back up again, so it's really tricky.
Yeah.
Okay, so which ones are we doing?
So problems 35 through 44.
Okay. 30, you say 35 or 25?
35.
35, looks like it's just off this page. This one goes through 34.
Yeah.
Let me ask again, did you say 25 through 34 or 35 through something?
It's 35, so I think it's on the next page.
Oh, okay, I got it. Find the real solutions of the equation. Okay, it's the answer to 35.
Uh, 5.
Yeah, how do you do this one? Let me ask you a few questions. Um, your mom indicated that you did better on homework than you did on tests.
Yeah.
So we probably want to try to address that this semester. I'm not totally sure how, but one thing that would help me is, are you allowed to use your calculator on all your tests or just on some parts of some of your tests?
He says to use, like, for half the test, it's like a scientific calculator. The
Okay.
second half of the test is a graphic calculator.
Okay. In other words, so you would always be able to use a calculator on problems like this,
Yes.
like 35 through 44. There's no way you would not ever be allowed to use a calculator.
Uh,
Oh, I tell you what, let's try to get you in position that you're always in when taking your tests. In other words, if you can use a calculator, get it and have it out and ready.
okay.
You have it?
Yeah.
Okay. So 35, we need to take the cube root of that, and it's 5.
Right.
Okay, so 35 is easy. What's the first step on 36?
Um, isolate the term.
How do I do that?
So divide both sides by 5.
What do you get?
216.
Now what?
So cube root it.
Okay. Now, do you know how to do that on your calculator?
Yes.
You can take it to the 1/3 power, which is probably the easiest way to do it. Just, in other words, raise it, raise the number 216 raised to the 1/3 power. That's the cube root of 216. And what do you
Right.
get?
6.
Okay. 37. What's the first step?
Well, you can root it by 5. The 5th root, or
Okay. So what's the next line?
x plus 10 equals
Now, do you know how to take the 5th root of 70?
yeah, it's 2.3.
2 says round answer to 2 decimal places, which
So,
means you generally want to get 3 decimal places. So 2.3 what?
4.
3 decimal places. I'll show you why in a moment.
Okay.
What's the 5th root? What is 70 to the 1/5 power equal to? $2.34 what? What's the next decimal spot?
2.3. Well, it's 2.338.
Okay, let's write it like that for the moment, and I'll show you why. Now, what's the next step?
Subtract 10.
Okay, which gives you 7.662, correct? Right?
Uh,
In other words, take this number and subtract 10 from
yeah.
it. Gives
Yes.
you, negative 7.662. And now round that off.
So x equals negative 7.66.
Yeah. Now, it's kind of a minor point, but notice that if we'd have taken our first answer and we'd have dropped the 8 instead of rounding off, then we would have actually got 7.67. So the general rule of thumb is do not round off until you get to the end. And when you're in the process of solving a problem, round it off to 3 decimal points. Now, it's true, we could have rounded that off to 0.34, and that would have given us the correct final answer also. But a lot of times, if you round off too early, you will get the wrong answer. You'll be off by 1/100th because of round off error. So you got to be a little careful. So I tell everybody that if they're asking for 2 decimal places, do everything to 3 decimal places until you get to the end, then round off.
Okay.
Now, I had a bit of an idea that I conveyed to your mom earlier today that it's the first time maybe I've ever tried anything like this. Perhaps it would be a good idea to do some of our sessions like you were in test mode. In other words, where I give you 2 or 3 problems in a row to do, you do all of them and then we review them, as opposed to the way we've been doing it, which is one problem at a time. In other words, when you take a test, you don't do it one problem at a time and then have somebody explain it to you, whether you got it right or wrong. What you do is you do one problem, then you do the next problem, and then you do the next problem, and so forth and so on. Then at the end of the test, your teacher grades it and tells you what you did wrong on each one.
Right.
So might be nice to get to that point.
Okay.
I don't know. Let me think about that before we actually put it into practice. Because the problem with that is that I don't do anything for the 5 or 10 minutes that you're doing those 3 problems. I'm not contributing anything. I'm just sitting here, sitting on my thumbs, waiting for you to do those. And I don't know that that's the best way to do online tutoring either. So I'm going to give that a little bit more thought as to how to best put you in test-taking mode. That's what we want to do, is we want to get you in the practice. I mean, as long as we're going to do 2 hours every week, we want to do it where it simulates you taking a test.
Okay.
So what do you get for 39?
So,
Tell me exactly what your calculator says. Go ahead and round it. Since once you do it, you can round it immediately. That'll be your final answer.
so negative 2.168.
So negative what? What's your answer going to be?
Negative 2.17.
Good. Number 40, first step.
Divide by 7.
Okay, it gives you x to the 4th equals 8. And next step.
Root it. So 4. 1.681. So 1.68.
Okay. Now, because that's an even number, it's always plus or minus.
Okay.
And if you leave out the plus and minus, you will lose half credit on the problem, guaranteed. No way your teacher's giving you full credit without the plus or minus. And he'll take off exactly half credit because you missed half the answer. Okay?
Okay.
If it's an odd root like that, well, then it's either a minus or a plus, depending on what that number is. But when it's an even root, it doesn't matter if it's squared or to the 4th power or to the 6th power. When you take the 4th root of 8, your answer is always plus or minus.
Okay.
I don't quite know how to get that into people's heads because those are not the kind of mistakes you want to make on a test. Those tests are hard enough as it is. You don't want to make a mistake on a problem that you know the answer to.
Right.
Okay? Now, your calculator doesn't give you the negative answer. It gives you just the positive answer. But if I told you x to the fourth was equal to 16, then x is plus or minus 2.
Okay.
Because that's even. That's what you're always looking for. If that exponent is even, your answer is always plus or minus. If the exponent is odd, then the answer is either plus or minus, but not both. It's one or the other.
Okay.
Okay. So 41. Next line. Read the next line to me.
X to the sixth equals 100.
100 minus 36.
Yeah, so 62.
64.
64.
Right. Use your calculator if you need to on these. So what's x equal to?
Um, 2. Plus or minus 2.
That's correct. That's kind of a good one to know anyway. That 2 to the 6th power is 64. Know your powers of 2, at least up to 128. Just because you need to know them a lot of times. Although when you have a calculator, you can get away with it. But you've already discovered one problem with the calculators. It doesn't show you the plus or minus when it needs to. Okay.
Okay.
How about 42? Next line.
X to the third equals negative 15.
And next line.
Oh. Negative 15. Negative 2.466.
And which is negative 2.47.
Right.
And notice that when you're doing odds, it always gives you the exact answer. If it was a plus, it would give you plus. If it was a minus, it would give you minus. You don't need to add a plus or minus to that. But you do when you're taking even. Calculators will not show you the plus and minus. You have to know it.
Okay.
And 43. Next line.
So x to the fourth equals
If you're going to depend on that calculator, you need to get faster with it.
81. I think. Yeah, 81.
Okay. Which makes x what?
So x is
What's your answer automatically going to start out with?
plus or minus.
What number does your calculator show?
3.
Okay. $44. Next line.
X to the third equals negative 216.
And next line.
X equals 6.
No.
Nice. Yeah. Plus what? 6. Plus or minus 6.
No. Do it on your calculator. What's your calculator give you?
Oh, hold on. I didn't put in the negative. Negative 216. It's negative 6.
Okay. Notice that it's only negative. It is not plus or minus, because we have an
Right.
odd exponent. When you have an odd exponent, your answer is either plus or minus. It's not both. It's the even exponents where it's always plus or minus, no matter what the exponent is. And the biggest difference is your calculator doesn't give you the correct answer when it's an even exponent. It does give you the exact correct answer when it's an odd exponent.
Okay.
What next?
Problem 49.
Okay.
And then that's it.
All right. Let me read it.
Sure. 49.
Now notice that this looks really complicated. Most people see a word problem and they think, oh man, I don't know if you're like that or not, but the reality is these are actually quite simple. In other words, is all we have to do is the formula is Q equals 3.367 times L times H to the 3/2. Okay, and then they're going to tell you what L and H are. H is the depth of the water in the spillway, which they're saying is 5. So I'm going to plug in 5. Oops. H is the depth, so H is 5. So it's going to be 5 to the 3/2. And L is the length of the bottom of the spillway, and in this case, that's 20 feet. So this formula becomes 3.367 times 20 times 5 to the 3/2 power. Now, what kind of calculator are you using?
Like,
Is it a TI-84 or is it an Inspire?
it's a Texas Instrument.
Okay, they're both Texas Instruments. The Inspire is a little better in doing these kind of problems, whereas the TI-84, this can be a little tricky to input even. In other words, if I'm doing this problem on a TI-84, I do that first. I come up with a number, I multiply it by 20, and then I multiply that by 3.367. If I'm doing it on an Inspire, then I can just go ahead and type 3.367 times 20 times 5 to the 3/2 power and be perfectly certain that it's going to put it in the way I want it in. That's the difference in the two calculators. And if you're on a TI-84 or less, even I don't know about the TI-89, but if it's a TI-84 or less, you got to be pretty careful about how you put that in. It's pretty easy to get it in wrong if you don't put in the right amount of parentheses. So there's never any problem in doing it the way I suggested, which is to take 5 to the 3/2 power. Let's do it that way, just so we can be completely safe.
Okay.
So what do you get when you take 5 to the 3/2 power?
Okay, 5.
And round that off to 3 decimal places. You can take it 5 to the 1.5 if you want. Same thing.
5.
Raised to the 1.5 power.
Right, so 11.18.
The reason I said take it to 3 decimals is you'll see in a moment. What's the third decimal?
8.
11.188.
11.180.
Oh, okay. Now, the reason I wanted you to go to 3 decimals is because we have to multiply it by this other number that's already at 3 decimals. Now, I don't see any instructions here that he wanted you to round it off to 2 decimals, so maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe it's a subtle point. But now take that number you got, 11.180, multiply it by 20, and then multiply that by 3.367. What do you get?
Okay, so 3.367. 37.64306.
Now you can round it off if they want you to round it off. And I'm presuming they still want you to round it off because you got to, right? I mean, it's not a rational number. It has to be rounded off. So I'm assuming that they still want you to round it off to 2 decimal places. But
Right.
this is kind of an example of where if you want your final answer to be rounded off to 2 decimal places, then you want all the numbers you use before you get there to be at least 3 decimal places. That way you will not be subject to round off error.
Okay.
For example, if I have these 2 numbers, think of a good way to put this. See over there on the left?
Yeah.
And if I'm adding those 2 numbers, if I round off before I add them, then I've got 2.67 that I'm going to add to 3.52, and I'm going to get 5.29 if I round off before adding them. If I round off after adding them, I get 6.29. Yeah, I get 6. What did I do wrong here? Let's see, that's 6.150, 6.16. I don't know what I did wrong here, but I'm trying to illustrate the problems with rounding off too soon. When you round off too soon, a lot of times the numbers you drop, I drop that and I drop that, but after I add them back together again, it's going to give you the same number in this case. But if I was multiplying, it wouldn't. Okay? So
Okay.
the rule of thumb is do not round off until the end. Or if you have to round off because you're using a calculator, then round off to one more place than they're requesting. If they're requesting your final answer be rounded off to 2 decimal places, then make sure you use 3 decimal places until you get to the end. Then round off to 2 decimal places.
Okay.
That's always the way you want to do these problems.
All right.
Okay. Now, that was the last one.
Yep. That's it.
Okay, so let's see. We're just going to do a half-hour session today.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about Thursday for a moment. I can do you at 4 o'clock on Tuesday and Thursday every week except this one. Somebody snuck in and made an appointment before you contacted me on Thursday today, and I didn't notice it.
Okay.
But if you want a different time on Thursday other than 4, I can do it. It's up to you.
Okay. So let's see.
In other words, I could do, if you want just a half-hour session, I could do 3:30 to 4, or I could do 5 to 5:30. I think your text said you couldn't do anything after 4. Is that right, or was it?
Yeah. So I can probably do 3:30. A half hour, 3:30 to 4. Because I get home around 3.
All right.
So
Put you in there for this week only. We'll put you in for 3:30 to 4.
all right. Sounds good.
And you go by Dimitri, is that right? Not Dimitri.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, either one works, but yeah.
Okay. All right. Demetrius, I will text you only the meeting ID number on Thursday.
All right.
At 3:30.
Sounds good.
You should have that icon on your desktop now that looks like a flower. That's your GoToMeeting icon.
Okay.
Talk to you then. Have a good
All right.
couple days. Bye-bye.
All right. Thank you. Bye.